Johnny's parents, Maria and John, usually came home on time. However, this time, they were delayed at work. "It's okay, Johnny," Maria smiled, adjusting his cap. "We'll be back as soon as we can." "Yeah, don't worry, son," John added, hugging him. "You're a big boy. You know what to do if something happens." And so, left alone with his thoughts, Johnny decided it might even be interesting. He turned on his favorite video game and immersed himself in the world of adventure. But hours passed, and his parents still hadn't returned. During a break between levels, Johnny heard a strange, rasping sound coming from the bedroom. His heart raced as he decided to investigate. Rising from his chair, he walked through the dark corridors, which seemed darker and more oppressive than usual. He slowly opened the bedroom door and stood on the threshold, wondering what to expect. The room was dark, with only a faint moonbeam illuminating it, creating eerie shadows on the walls. Something was moving quietly in the room. Johnny initially thought it was just the wind, but then he heard faint whispers. His neck hair stood on end, but he tried to remain calm. "Who's there?" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. But there was no response. Instead, the whispers grew louder, becoming more distinct and intense. Johnny felt fear coursing through his body, but he couldn't just leave it be. He stepped into the room, his heart pounding as if it wanted to escape his. As he approached the bed where his cat Misha usually slept, he saw something that made him freeze with fear. Sitting on the edge of the bed was a dark figure, its eyes gleaming in the darkness, and it whispered something unintelligible. "Who are you?" Johnny's trembling voice echoed. "I am your nightmare, Johnny," the figure replied, its voice the same hissing whisper he heard in his head. "I've come for you." Johnny tried to run, but his legs felt glued to the floor. His heart beat so fast he could hardly breathe. He watched as the dark figure approached him, its eyes glowing like hellfire, but he couldn't look away. Just at the last moment, he woke up, sitting in bed, covered in cold sweat. He looked around and realized it was just a dream. Surprised and breathless, he tried to calm his heart, trying to forget about the strange dark figure from his nightmare. Throughout the rest of the evening, Johnny tried to distract himself from his restless thoughts by playing video games, watching movies, and doing homework. But every sound, every slight knock or raspy whisper caught his attention. At times, as darkness enveloped his room, he felt fear creeping into his soul, like a cold underground stream winding its way beneath his feet. He decided to turn on the night light to soothe himself a little. However, even the faint light did little to help him fight the fear filling his heart. As time passed, the nocturnal silence began to feel tedious and carefree. Johnny started to feel tired, but he couldn't fall asleep. Every sound, no matter how small, drew his attention and kept him on guard. Finally, when the clock struck midnight, Johnny decided to try to sleep again. He closed his eyes and tried to drift into slumber. However, just as he was about to lose consciousness, he heard a faint knocking from the wall. He opened his eyes and looked at the wall, hoping it was just his imagination, but the knocking persisted, rhythmic and constant, like a pulsating heart. Johnny got up from bed and tried to determine the source of the sound. He slowly walked around the room, listening to the knocking. The closer he got to the wall, the louder the sound became. It seemed like he could feel every beat, as if he himself were becoming part of this rhythm. When he reached the wall, he felt his heart, for there on the wall was a distinct imprint of a hand, gradually forming as if an invisible force pressed against the wall. Johnny stepped back, feeling a cold stream of fear course through his body. "Who's Grio's there?" he exclaimed, his voice trembling with fear. There was no response. Instead, he heard a quiet whisper echoing from the wall. Johnny. It was too much for him. He decided to flee, to run from his room, to seek safety in his parents' bedroom. His heart pounded so fast that he could barely breathe as he ran through the corridor, feeling each step bring him closer to salvation. But when he reached the doors of his parents' bedroom and began to push the handle, he felt something heavy in his heart. The doors opened and he broke down. He entered and saw what he feared to see. A dark figure standing before him, sinister. "You've come to us, Johnny," the dark silhouette uttered with a menacing whisper, its eyes glowing in the darkness. "You cannot escape from your nightmare." Johnny felt his heart skip a beat as the dark figure advanced toward him. All his energy seemed to vanish, and strength seemed to leave his body. He tried to scream, but his voice got stuck in his throat, only coming out as a weak whisper. The figure approached closer, its outline becoming clearer, and the fear it invoked overwhelming Johnny's consciousness. He felt the darkness engulfing him, dragging him into the abyss of nightmares. But suddenly, as the dark figure was almost upon him, he felt himself falling asleep. His consciousness began to lose the battle with sleep, and he slumped to the floor, enveloped in darkness and fear. When Johnny opened his eyes, he was back in his bed. He woke up from the nightmarish dream that had exploded like a violent wave of fear. However, now he was safe, at home, feeling relieved that his nightmare had ended.